Hello class 8, hope you all are good. Students, today in this video I am going to start a new chapter in biology, that is your chapter number 2, reproduction in plants. As you all know that reproduction is one of the main characteristics of all living organisms. All living organisms, they reproduce of their own kind and to produce their young ones so that they can survive on this earth and continue their species. In plants also, a seed, it grow into a new seedlings, then these seedlings later on develop into a mature plant. So today we will discuss the different modes of reproduction in plants. Let's start the chapter. Reproduction in plants. Reproduction is one of the most important properties of living organisms. It means creating new life, producing young ones of their own kind. So how you will define reproduction? Reproduction is the process of giving rise to new individual organisms from their parent is called reproduction. Now the question is, why living organisms need to reproduce? As you all know that when any organism take birth, it complete its lifespan, and then what's happen? It die after some time, leaving behind individuals of its own kind. These individuals, then what's happen? They again reproduce during their lifespan. If they would not reproduce, then after their death, there would be no organisms left and the species would thus perish or die off or extinct from this earth. And second thing, reproduction is the mechanism through which the continuity of a species is maintained from generation to generation. Next is your modes of reproduction or types of reproduction. Living organisms exhibit several modes of reproduction. But there are two basic modes of reproduction in plants. First is your sexual reproduction and second is your asexual reproduction. So what is the difference between sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction? In sexual reproduction, both male and female gametes are involved and they come from two different parents. But in asexual reproduction, there is no involvement of gametes. Second difference is sexual reproduction is common in all flowering plants, while lower plants reproduce asexually. Let's discuss first asexual reproduction in plants. Asexual reproduction is a common and simplest method of reproduction in plants, and the different types of asexual reproduction found in plants are: first, binary fission, second, budding, third, fragmentation, fourth, spore formation, fifth, regeneration, and sixth is your vegetative propagation. Let's discuss first binary fission. Actually, what is binary fission? Binary fission means the division of the parent body into two equal halves to produce daughter cells. It is the most common method of asexual reproduction in unicellular organisms like bacteria and amoeba. In bacteria, the single cell of bacterium divides into two and each cell grows as a separate individual. In this type of fission, the nuclear material and cytoplasmic content both are exactly divided as a constriction develops in the middle of the cell, which gradually deepens, as a result of which two daughter cells are separated from one another. And then each of the two parts grows into full-sized identical cells called the daughter cells. Right? Next is your budding. Budding means an outgrowth called bud arises from the surface of the parent body and leads to an individual life. Budding is commonly observed in yeast. Let's see how the process of budding takes place in yeast. In budding, an outgrowth called bud arises from the surface of the parent body. This bud grows bigger with the accumulation of cytoplasm. And side by side, nucleus also divides and passes on to each end. the bud ultimately gets cut off from the parent body and leads an individual life. The budding may be repeated, resulting in one or more chains. In yeast, bud formation occurs very fast. Thus, in short time, a chain of yeast cells is produced. Next type of asexual reproduction is fragmentation. This is a type of asexual reproduction. The filamentous body of lower plants like Spirogyra, they breaks up into two or more fragments, and then each fragment or a piece grows into a new individual. Now next is your spore formation. In non-flowering plants like bacteria, fungi and mushrooms, they reproduce asexually by the process of spore formation. Spores are very small in size. They have thick walls. The thick walls help the spores to survive in adverse conditions of the environment like high temperature, scarcity of water and lack of food. Molds, which is a type of fungus, reproduce by the process of spore formation. In molds, actually each spores, it contains nuclear material and a small mass of cytoplasm enclosed within a tough outer wall called spore sac, or it is also called sporangium. When the sporangium is mature and finds suitable environment, it bursts and releases spores. Each spores germinate and give rise to a new mold. Next is your regeneration. Regeneration is an asexual method of reproduction. In this process, if the body of a parent organism gets cut, then each cut part can regenerate and form a whole new organisms from its body parts. It's a common observation. When there is a cut in your finger, it heals up within few days. The same way, there are so many organisms that which can easily grow or repair itself in some or the other way. New cells grow to replace damaged or lost cell by the way of cell division. So regeneration is the ability of living things to repair themselves or grow lost part. And the very good examples of regeneration are hydra, planaria and starfish. They undergo regeneration. Now next is your vegetative propagation. Some plants, they reproduce asexually by their vegetative parts like stem, roots and leaves, rather than by production of seeds. Such method of reproduction is called what? Vegetative reproduction. Vegetative propagation takes place in plants which do not produce seeds or whose seeds cannot germinate. There are two main methods of vegetative propagation. First is your natural vegetative propagation and second is your artificial methods of vegetative propagation. Natural vegetative propagation takes place by underground stems, by aerial stems, by roots and by leaves. First we will discuss vegetative propagation by roots. In sweet potato, dahlia or asparagus, the swollen and fleshy roots are present. These roots store a large quantity of food and new plants arise from the swollen roots buried in the soil. Next is your vegetative propagation by underground stems. Actually, there are so many methods by which the plants they grow by underground stems. These are what? Bulb, rhizome, culm and tuber. Now first, what is bulb? It is a vertical in direction and its terminal bud give rise to the floral shoots. Axillary buds that may be produced in the axils of fleshy scales grow into aerial shoots under favorable conditions. And your examples of a bulb are onion, garlic and tulip. Next is your rhizome. Rhizome is an underground stem that often looks and acts like a root. It is different from a root as it has buds and it usually grows horizontally. Rhizomes usually produce aerial stems and underground roots from these birds. Examples of rhizomes are ginger, turmeric and banana. Next is your corm. A corm is a short stem swollen with stored food. The corms separate from each other and form new plants. Gladulus and colocasia are the examples of corm. Next is your tuber. A tuber is an underground stem that is swollen with a supply of stored food. Stem tubers have several small buds, what they are called eyes, and these eyes they give rise to new plants. An example of tuber is potato. Next vegetative propagation is by aerial stems. In strawberry, long stems grow over the soil surface and are called runners or stolons. They have creeping stems which produce roots at nodes, and vertical stem arise into new plants. Examples: doobgrass, wood sorrel and strawberry. Next is your vegetative propagation by leaves. Some plants like bryophyllum and begonia, they can be propagated by leaves. In bryophyllum, plantlets they develop from the margins of intact leaves, and these plantlets on being detached develop into new independent plants. Next we will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of vegetative propagation. Now what are the advantages of vegetative propagation? Vegetative propagation, actually it is a relatively quick way to produce new plants, but disadvantages is overcrowding can occur which causes competition for resources. Second advantage of vegetative propagation is good characters of the parent are passed to the offsprings, but disadvantages is your diseases of the parent plants can easily be transmitted to the offspring. Offsprings means next generation, right? Now third advantages is your no external factors or other plants are needed for reproduction, while disadvantages is your no new features in offspring to adapt to any changes in environmental conditions. And fourth disadvantages is undesirable characters are passed on to the offsprings. Thank you, children.